Good afternoon. This is yet another session of artists and administrators for Central City Opera talking to each other. Today it is myself, Karen Federing, the Director of Production for Central City Opera, talking with two of my dear old friends.
Hey,
I hesitate to use the
easy.
word old. Emily Pulley.
You should hesitate.
She should hesitate. So it's Emily Pulley and Jonathan Hayes. Thanks so much for chatting with me this afternoon on this lovely Central City day.
Gorgeous.
Happy to be here.
So Emily, well, actually both of you have a very long history with this organization. You both started as young artists, as apprentices here, and then ultimately moved into leading roles as well. Some of the roles I can think of with you, Emily, are Pagliacci Goyescas, going back to 2003, to Susanna, to most recently Carmen in 2017. Jonathan, I can't recall what year Apprentice was, but
94, 95.
there we go.
Both years.
I think the first time I saw you on our stage was in 2003 with Italiana. And then last season, of course, in our acclaimed Billy Budd,
So good.
which was everybody in the kitchen sink up on our
That kitchen
stage.
sink was something, I
That
tell
was
you
a
what.
big kitchen sink.
Yeah.
So you both have what I think is a really interesting history. I mean, I've got 18 years with the company. You guys go back at probably at least that long.
Oh my gosh, I can't do that. That's higher level. I'll have to take my shoes off to do that.
But you have, I think, an interesting perspective on this organization because you came to it as young artists
Yes.
and grew here in many ways. You've both been all over the place. You've been to New York, you've been overseas and some, but you've always come back here too. So I'm curious, what is it about the ethos about this environment, the training for that matter, that has stayed with you as your careers have progressed, and perhaps what is it also about the Opera House itself that has really kept it close to your heart and an important factor in your working life?
Well, I credit my first summer here with direct correlation to winning Met auditions because it was my work with John Moriarty in audition class and diction class, and having that education and that confidence, it really allowed me to step out on the Met stage and sing like Mr. Moriarty would have wanted me to, and that was it really gave me a huge advantage, I think, because even when you're a young singer and you're still trying to figure things out, it's like you look to the people who've been around for forever and have seen people come starting as young artists and moving all the way up, and you're like, well, I can trust him, and if he tells me that I can do this, then maybe I can. And so that was a real boost for me at a time when I didn't know if I was going to continue singing or not. It was Central City was my last. I finished up my master's degree and I had no plans other than Central City, and I won the Met auditions the next year. So that and the training I got here subsequently as an apprentice the next summer, I use it all the time. I use it all the time in auditioning, in teaching, in performing. And the ethos of this place is you get absolutely as much out of it as you're willing to put into it. You drag yourself out of bed in the morning, you go to movement class, and you do this, and you do that. And as much effort as you put into it, you get out of it, and it can take you as far as you're willing to earn, I should say.
Yeah, no, very true. And I think that, I've traveled through time with the people that I met here in 1994 as an apprentice, and worked with them, seen them grow as artists along with myself and my career. That's been incredible always to have those relationships. I know right before the COVID-19 crisis began and we all shut down and went indoors, Emily and I had brunch in New York with Kurt Olds. Kurt and I were apprentices together in 1994. And John McVeigh, who's been an artist here. Was John an apprentice out here?
I'm not even sure.
I'm not sure that he was, but he was certainly an artist here through the years. So, those relationships have been incredibly strong for me through the years, and it's something that I always find myself returning to.
since I know you to be such expressive performers, not just vocally, but how you transmit the storytelling that is so even beyond the vocal lines that you've got to sing. How do you think the opera house figures into that? Because I know that is something I focus on a lot in my capacity, and in talking to people and being out front and seeing people react to what you're doing on the stage. How has that influenced your performances here? That perhaps is different for example, working on the Met stage, which is so huge.
Yeah.
It's very special. I mean, it's not just the fact that it's such an intimate theater, but the fact that the history that's tied to it. You feel like you're part of a legacy of people who, this was a house that was built out of love for singing and for creating art. And I, maybe I'm a softie, but it's like I feel that way every time I'm here. When I walk out on that stage, it's like I'm a part of that storyline. And
You're on a continuum.
I am on a continuum, but it is true that you can absolutely feel when the audience is with you, and you can be so nuanced in what you do and know that someone's going to see it, which keeps you honest. But it also it builds that connection, which is why we do what we do. Is that connection between, the music and what we're trying to convey, and the audience being a part of that story that we're creating. And it's a wonderful thing that happens in that opera house.
Absolutely. The Jewel Box Theater, it offers so many things that a really large theater doesn't offer. Of course, the audience can see you, but then from the stage, you can feel you can sing your softest piano. And certainly all the musicians that I've worked with here in the pit support that kind of music making. That's very special, and it's uncommon.
What does it mean to come back here? I mean, we've talked about this privately, but what does it mean to come back here as a principal artist, having been here as a young artist? What is that? What do you feel? What do you feel that? I don't want to use the word obligate, but I'm going to use the word obligate. What do you feel that means when you come back here in that capacity?
Well, I mean,
because also you're interacting with now the next.
Exactly.
As we say, the next
Absolutely.
generation. I feel that way with
Yeah.
my interns. And
I always feel completely supported when I'm here by everybody. Not just you, for example, who, we've now known each other for 17, 18 years. But by everybody, the people that I've met, the artists that I work with, and I can still see that special bonding experience happening with the young artists that are here. I know last summer working with the young artists so closely in Billy Budd, just extraordinary young singers, and now we all know each other, and so it's like being a part of the thing that comes after what we've built. So it's great to be part of that history, I think.
You hope that you leave some sort of legacy, and it's not about the recordings you do or the premieres or whatever that seems like the sort of the big things. It's the influence that you have on the next generation of singers. And so this is absolutely a place, the principal artists who were here when I was a studio artist and an apprentice, they had a huge impact on me, and they have a very special place in my heart. And so you do feel that obligation to be that for them, and it makes you a better performer when you're here, because you know that you're being observed. And there would be, in rehearsal processes, there's always, you'll have moments of stress, like during tech week. I don't know. I don't have to tell you. It's test weeks. It's stressful during tech weeks. But there have been times when you can start to feel yourself getting tense, and then you're like, there are a couple dozen eyes on me right now, and I'm teaching them how to behave in this kind of situation. And so it can bring the absolute best out of you.
That's a great way of saying it. I don't know how exactly to articulate this, but there is less. It feels like there's less distance between the young artist and the artist at Central City than there are in
Other programs.
in many places. And to bring up one star, I remember so clearly sitting at a table with Jeff Buckman, Jim Bobick, Uh, Danny Belcher was sitting at that
Baritone
table.
Hall of Fame.
And,
Good
and,
going.
and Bob Orth was sitting with us playing cards backstage at the old gala concerts that we used to do down in Denver. And Bob just marched over and kind of said, "All right, who don't I know, and who's playing poker and who's stealing?" And that was it. And then that was, and I was kind of okay, I'm in because who's this big star that I need to get to know when I was just 20 something. And that I certainly feel, and I certainly hope that kind of culture of kind of breaking down the walls of superiority between artist and young artist, that exists here in a big way. I've always valued that so much.
Well, and part of it is because I remember my first summer here, we couldn't use the shower or flush the toilets because the water treatment plant was not prepared for when all the casinos had opened and everything like that. So I remember Mr. Moriarty saying, "So how are you enjoying your experience here?" I said, "Well, I'm really loving it. It's combining a couple of my favorite things, singing and camping." But again, these are rustic conditions, and my definition of a diva is somebody who can only perform under ideal circumstances, and she decides what those circumstances are. So, when you're up here at close to 8,000 feet and the air is dry and there's dust and pollen and you really do learn what it's like to try to give your absolute best under different circumstances, we shall say.
Yeah.
But it keeps, again, I keep coming back to it, keeps you honest. And that same level of it's a lack of pretense, because it's like, we know that you're living in a house where it's been around for over 100 years, right. and it's a delicate structure, but it's like, it's not, you don't have that sort of the glamour that everybody associates with the opera world.
It's not rarefied.
It's not rarefied. Thank you. That's a great word. So the air is rarefied. But
it is rare. It is rare and rarefied.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is that.
But I think that being able to create a really, really high level of art under rustic, conditions, I think that's a great lesson to learn as a young artist in particular, because then there aren't going to be a lot of situations that something's thrown at you and you're like, I can't do this.
I can't work under those
I
conditions.
can't work under these conditions.
Yeah.
But I think as an artist too, it's like, I can do this. So, but it's also, it's part of the charm, and I think it is part of the thing that once you've experienced it, you feel a bond with other people who have that in common with you.
That's another good point, that you and I have never sung together up here. But we've been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
We were here together in 2003,
in different shows,
which is when we met and kind of got to know each other well.
And then I hadn't seen him again until last summer when I came up for Billy Budd.
Yeah.
I think everybody tends to gravitate back to this.
It's true.
It's true. And I think
even when we're not performing here, we'll come see the shows.
And I think
because it feels like home.
Well, exactly right. And I think part of it is the fact that we are a residential company.
Right.
And we try to keep everybody so close by.
Right.
And that feeling that I may not be in your show, but I'm supportive of what you're doing because I'm living next door to you, and,
right.
and I can come see your final dress,
come
see your run through. And I think, even from a production standpoint, I think that support is so present.
Yes.
And I've watched it in action, so, all these seasons where folks just want to engage with each other. And I think, to what you were saying, Jonathan, that modeling to the young artists as well, that it's not just your show.
Yeah.
It's the company's work that is being done, and I'm part of that, even if I'm not necessarily in that show.
Yeah.
It's so huge, and it's so particular. I agree with you. I don't think it can be felt everywhere, because sometimes, you're living wherever and you're commuting home for your rehearsal. You get disconnected.
Right.
Not necessarily in a bad sense, but you do disconnect, and here you're swimming in it in the best possible way.
Yes.
So to that end, obviously, this summer is a bit different for all of us.
What?
It is?
I can't imagine what I mean by that, but obviously, it's had a huge impact on all of us, whatever part of this business we're in, however we ply our trade. Impact on the arts beyond opera, obviously, to all various art forms that are out there that require and I say require intentionally for require an audience. Emily, you spent all of this COVID period so far in Texas.
I was home for a concert that was subsequently canceled. And that was when New York was being hit really, really hard. And I thought, one less person in New York City will not be a bad thing. So I stayed in Texas.
And speaking of New York, Jonathan, you were holed up in New York.
I was.
Talk a little bit, both to the extent that you guys are comfortable, in both locations, what it's been like in those locations, but also the fact that it's not what a normal summer would be for you guys. You're used to being able to share your gift to a large group of people, and share it with colleagues that you're working with as well, not just audience.
You just miss it so much. You miss the collaboration, and people have been so creative in figuring out ways to. I'm part of several video projects.
This one included.
Well, exactly. No, but several Zoom operas and video episodes and stuff like that. It's like, but it's just so different than being in a shared space and having give and take with your accompanist and having and with your colleagues. It's like, this is what we do. This is what we do. And having to be creative and finding new ways to do that, I think is only a healthy thing. I think that, and all of those things, these new skills that we've had to learn, I think we're still going to be able to find use for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope that people will have a whole new appreciation for having a shared experience in a common place, and that they will come running back to the theater to have that.
Experience.
But I felt like I had it pretty easy in Texas because it was before everything went crazy in Texas, like it is right now. But I would be talking to Jonathan or other friends in New York, and it would just break my heart because you're absolutely wishing there were something that you could do,
Mm-hmm.
and so all of our natural tendencies to want to comfort people or want to gather together are all the things that we're not allowed to do.
Right.
So it felt, even though I was in a pretty safe place, my heart was among my friends who were in a really rough place.
I'm with you. I mean, as a New Yorker too, I felt
Right.
like, from everything I could tell, it was so different from being there on 9/11, and so different from even a Hurricane Sandy, where people
Right.
were able to help each other
Yeah.
and be generous in that way.
Yeah, like you, I was in New York on 9/11, and there was a real sense of community and bonding following that experience, where you were, for weeks you would walk around the street and everybody was saying hello to each other and encouraging one another, etc. Unfortunately, that kind of contact wasn't possible once we were all sheltering indoors, and it was a very isolating experience. I had an interesting experience that I think I can tell you a little bit about. When I was in New York, we were all kind of sequestered in my apartment building, not really going anywhere, ordering our groceries, all of that kind of thing. And I got an email from a neighbor, and she said, "Would you be willing to give a concert to the other members of our floor?" And she said, we could email everybody, and everyone could open their door and get a little cocktail, and then maybe you could sing to us. And I thought about it, and I said, sure. When would you like this to happen? And she said, how about tonight? And
I'm like the present.
I said, well, why don't you give me 24 hours to get a program together? And I created a short little program of 4 songs and a piano piece. I wheeled my piano up to the door at the appointed hour, and it amazed me, at least, but all of the people on my hall attended. Every single person was there because we were all stuck indoors. And afterward, we all kind of had a cocktail, and we're, shouting to everybody down the hall and having a good time. And they asked if we could do it the following week.
How many weeks did you end up doing that?
And I wound up doing it 6 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
And there was a
6
theme
weeks.
every week.
And each week I would choose a
Okay.
theme. it really became a way for me to keep singing, while most of the day I felt miserable because of hearing sirens and
Sure.
living 5 blocks away from a hospital where there was a refrigerated truck behind it full of corpses. So dealing with that environment, I needed an artistic outlet, and probably also I needed an audience.
Sure.
And bless
People
them,
to
they
tell a
gave
story
they gave
to.
me one.
Yeah.
So
And that ultimately also led you both to come out here. I mean,
it did.
and understandably so. I mean,
Did.
this is very different. You are not hunkered down in quite the same way, to say the least.
Spoiled is the
and-
word I
and
use for
yeah.
myself, because I mean we're up here, and it's beautiful to be here, and we have our pod
Yep.
of people, and
Quarantine when you
Quarantine
got
when we
here.
got here,
responsible
and-
people that you are,
we're able to do work on the historic properties.
which is so awesome because you are up here also singing in our summer recitals.
we didn't know that was going to happen.
We didn't know that was going to happen.
What an amazing luxury that you just happened to be out here, of course.
It was great. Yeah.
But you also came out to do something I think is rather unusual and laudable. The fact that you said, we want to come out here, and what can we do to help the organization? And gosh darn it, the organization put you to work.
They put a paintbrush in our hand.
Yeah,
Good.
so talk a little bit about that, because that, to me, that's just very unusual. I mean, yes, this is a lovely getaway, but it's not like your feet are up, 24 hours a day.
Well, it was Jonathan's idea.
Well, I saw on Facebook one day Brian Cook, our orchestra manager, had commented on a Facebook thread that he and music director John Burrill were up here staying in Central City. Well, I didn't think that anybody was going to be
Sure.
up here this summer, and I immediately started thinking, well,
I want to go to there.
I want to go out there. And he said they were working for the historic properties director. And I went, well, I wonder if they need a volunteer. And I don't know, about 24 hours later, I was on the phone with Emily, and I told her about this. And she said, well, did you ask them?
Sign me up.
So I wrote a message to John and Brian and said, how would you feel about having a couple on-site volunteers? And within hours,
Oh, yeah.
and we were so excited.
Yeah, John
It's like,
said,
we got another response.
yeah, no response, we're texting. Yeah,
And so once we got, they said, come on out. And
Yeah.
Jonathan was able to come out like a week, 2 weeks.
I left a little more than a week
Yeah.
later, about 8 days after that conversation. I've had everything packed up and sorted out, and I got in the car and drove out here. Yeah.
From New
You've been
York.
out here for like 6 weeks, basically, the two of you.
Yeah, he's
Working.
probably closer to 2 months.
Yeah.
Getting
And-
close, yeah.
And I
think
had
it's
a couple obligations in Texas that I had to finish up, and then I literally left from like the parking lot of my second singing engagement and hit the road.
You sang and ran.
Sang and ran. Yeah. So I couldn't be happier to be here.
Yes,
So wonderful.
Same-
I mean, it's
same here.
It's not what you would normally be doing, but
No, but you want to be a part of something. And knowing, I mean, it sounds kind of hokey, but sure, we're slapping paint. I mean, very delicately painting.
No, we're not slapping. There's no.
indeed, no slapping, no slapping.
No, we're painting and
Gently applying.
gently applying. But I know that whoever stays in that room next summer, their quality of life is going to be a little bit better because of some effort that I put into it. And that's,
You put a handprint in there, right?
oh
Like
yeah,
your
oh
initials,
yeah.
the whole thing.
So yes, but that means a lot to me because that's a form of legacy too.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it sure is. Absolutely.
And I think honestly, we're trying to form not so much an alumni association, but a connection of people who've worked in Central City. Joe Gaines, another former young artist and principal artist. And because I think that there are an awful lot of people who've spent time up here who would love to come contribute in some similar way. And and I think that's a great way that you can continue to give back. Of course, giving financially is one way, but giving of your time and goodwill to the company, I think is really important.
Absolutely.
If it's played a really important role in your life, as it has for
Exactly.
us.
Your attachment
Yeah.
is broad, to
Yes.
say the least.
Yes.
And then there's also doing a bit of singing while you're at it.
Yes.
Both of you are singing recitals in our opera garden this summer. Emily, you've already done yours.
I have.
Talk about, and Jonathan, we've rehearsed yours. I know from talking to the artists who've done that so far, it is a sheer relief.
It really does feel like a sigh of
to
relief.
perform. Is that how you guys are feeling it as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Short answer.
Yes.
Well, the nice thing is, I assumed that I was going to have to be mic'd in the garden, but you've got the rock wall of the opera house, you've got the Teller house, and then you've got a rock wall behind you. So it's like the natural acoustics out there
are pretty fabulous.
are pretty
Yes,
great,
Yeah.
and so
Who'd have
that's kind of great too, especially when we're all so overwhelmed with technology right now. It's like how nice to sing without a microphone and not into a computer screen.
In a way, it's the outside version of what we would do in the opera
Absolutely.
house. So
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
acoustical as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how, just to sort of wrap up and thinking ahead a bit, which I know is a challenge for all of us.
But
to
it's a very
do at the
necessary
moment.
thing.
Yeah.
Very necessary. You're absolutely right. This particular industry is probably one of the last that will come back in its fullness, in the way that we would wish it to. Obviously,
Yeah.
why do you think? I mean, you do this for a living. I do this for a living too. Why do you think it's crucial that happen as soon as it possibly can? Not just obviously because the financial component is attached to that, but and also, what do you think as artists? Do you think work will come out of this, new work that we'll talk about this time? That often happens when there are major historical events that take place. Some that are happy, some that are not so much. The AIDS crisis, art came out of that. So
Right.
how do you see this further down the line? Where do you see the arts taking this potentially?
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen. I don't know. The thing that I hope for is that theaters like Central City Opera will find a way to function, to bring productions to fruition during this time, because it's very, very difficult to be without it. And I say that not just as a performer whose livelihood depends on it, but also as an audience member.
Mhm.
It's Emily and I go to a lot of things together in New York and outside of New York, and it's been very hard not to be with my show besties.
Yep,
sure.
And I know, the entire culture of theater goers feels that way.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we can get back to, if not the same kind of, sitting side by side in the opera house, the sooner that we can get back to having live performances and shared theatrical experiences again, the better.
We have our wonderful friend Kurt Oltz is currently performing to a full theater in Seoul, Korea.
Go Kurt. Go
Yes,
Kurt.
he's on the international tour of Phantom of the Opera, and the entire audience is in a mask. They get their temperature checked at the door. They get disinfected, sprayed on their hands, and before they go in and at intermission, and they are absolutely willing to do it.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Because it matters that much.
It matters that
Matters
much
that
to them.
much.
that experience continues.
Yes, and so Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber is trying really hard to see if similar measures can be instituted in some of his theaters, and it's very hard because we want what we want when we want it, and we want it the way we want it, and it's so I think that people will be willing to do what they need to do in order to come back to the theater. I mean, I tend to be pretty optimistic about that, but
Yeah. Well, it's true. Sorry, Dad. My octogenarian father bought his subscription to the Met this year, the way that he always does, and he just went, "I'm going." And I took that as a real vote of confidence that he was willing to, mask
Whatever it
up if he
takes.
needs to, whatever it takes, in order to hear good opera. And I have to believe there's a massive community of people out there waiting for theaters to open up so that they can go and cheer on their favorite performers.
Yes, and I think also to some degree hoping that we will speak to the emotions of the time. Too.
I think so. I
there's
think
potential
everybody.
for that.
That's what opera does. It's a shared, catharsis, and there's a lot that we need to work through after all of this. And but I also feel like people are maybe becoming so saturated with technology that they won't sit at home in front of their screens, and they'll want to be in the theater and make that much more effort to actually be a part of a shared live experience.
We're needed.
We're needed.
We're needed. Well, I think that's a great note to end this conversation.
How about this note?
No, then we have to pay you for that.
Right, exactly. Time is money.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you,
and
Karen.
chatting.
It's been a pleasure.
And I look forward to hearing more from you this summer, because I know I will. And it's great to have you out here. Thank you so much for coming out here and giving the gift of yourself in all of its possibilities. So thank you so very much for that.
Thanks, Karen.
Our pleasure.